My name is Claire Whitmore. I'm 26. And if you think you know how this ends, stay tuned. What happens when the man you ignore on the street holds the key to your family's darkest secret? The morning air was damp, the city buzzing with traffic, but his grip on my wrist was ice. His beard was matted, his clothes torn, but his eyes, sharp, unblinking, alive. "Don't step inside that house," he rasped. "It'll cost you everything." I pulled free, heart pounding, and hurried to my car. The leather seat felt cold against my back as I tried to laugh it off. A homeless man. A random warning. Coincidence, surely. But the words clung to me like smoke as I drove through winding country roads toward my grandfather's estate. The Whitmore mansion loomed ahead, all stone and shadow, where secrets felt stitched into every brick. Today, the family would gather to divide his empire. The lakeside properties, the businesses, the millions no one ever spoke of, but everyone craved. Inside, cousins whispered, lawyers shuffled papers, my parents sat stiff-backed at the front. Their eyes flicked to me, then away, like I was just another pawn in a game I hadn't agreed to play. Then the doors creaked open. Footsteps echoed, and someone stepped in behind me.
The room gasped.
My mother's face drained of color. My father's hands gripped the armrests until his knuckles whitened. They looked less like heirs waiting for fortune and more like criminals staring at a ghost. I turned slowly, pulse hammering. And in that moment, I realized the warning hadn't been madness. It had been prophecy. The room seemed to hold its breath. Papers fluttered in the lawyer's hands, but no one dared move. My parents' eyes were locked on the figure behind me, their faces pale, their lips trembling as if the past had just walked back into the room. I turned, and my breath caught. The man who entered wasn't dressed in rags now. His hair was neatly combed, his coat tailored though worn at the edges. But I knew those eyes. The same piercing stare from the roadside. The so-called homeless man who had grabbed my wrist. Only now he didn't look broken. He looked purposeful. "Who is this?" I whispered. My father's voice cracked. "It can't be, you're dead." Dead? My skin prickled with cold. The man stepped forward, his boots echoing on the marble floor.
"No, Robert."
"Not dead. Just erased." His voice was steady, calm, yet it cut sharper than any blade. Whispers rippled among my cousins, confusion rising. The lawyer cleared his throat, uneasy. "Mr. Whitmore instructed me to begin only once all named parties were present. And it appears we are." My mother's hand gripped my arm, nails digging in. "Claire, don't listen to him. He's dangerous." But dangerous wasn't what I saw. I saw clarity, truth burning behind those weary eyes. The kind of truth that could shatter an empire. The man's gaze swept the room, finally landing on me. "Your grandfather wanted me here. He knew the lies this family buried. And he knew only I could unearth them." Silence hung heavy. My father's forehead glistened with sweat. My mother's lips trembled, forming words she couldn't force out. I swallowed hard, my pulse racing. "Who are you?" He didn't flinch, didn't blink. "I'm the son your grandfather never told you about. The first heir. The rightful one." Gasps broke out. The room fractured into whispers and stares. My parents looked like they'd been struck by lightning. And I stood between two worlds, my blood frozen, realizing the warning hadn't been for nothing. It had been a doorway, and now it had opened. The chaos erupted. My cousins leaned in, whispering furiously, eyes darting between the stranger and my parents. The lawyer's pen slipped from his hand, clattering to the polished oak table. My father finally found his voice, though it cracked under the weight of panic. "This is absurd. My father had no other son. This man is an imposter, nothing more." But the stranger smiled faintly, the kind of smile that said you can't outrun the truth forever. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small leather-bound journal. Its edges were frayed, the pages yellowed with time. He set it on the table with deliberate care. "This was your father's," he said evenly. "His handwriting. His confessions. Every transfer, every letter he sent to my mother. And every promise he made to me. Gasps rippled again. The lawyer picked up the book, flipping through its pages, his brow furrowing deeper with each line he read. Finally, he looked up at my father, then at my mother. This appears authentic. These are indeed Mr. Whitmore's records. My mother's face twisted, half fear, half fury. Forgery. Clever forgery. Don't be taken in, Claire. But my father couldn't meet my eyes. His silence screamed louder than her denial. I stared at him, my chest tightening. Dad, is it true? His jaw clenched. His shoulders sagged. For the first time in my life, Robert Whitmore looked less like a man of power and more like a child cornered in his own lies. The stranger's gaze shifted to me, softer now. Your grandfather loved you. He wanted you to know the truth, that the fortune you're here to inherit was built on silence and betrayal. He left me with a choice: expose it or let the cycle repeat. The room went still. I could feel every eye on me, waiting, judging, wondering which way I would turn. And in that stillness, the weight of legacy pressed down like iron. A hidden brother, a fortune tainted by secrets, parents unraveling before my eyes. I had come for a will reading. Instead, I had walked into a reckoning. The lawyer cleared his throat, his voice unsteady. According to Mr. Whitmore's final instructions, all heirs must be acknowledged before the estate can be divided. If this man is who he claims, then... My father slammed his hand on the table, rattling the glasses. Enough. This stray doesn't belong here. He's nothing. He's trying to steal what's ours. The stranger didn't flinch. He simply opened the journal to a page marked with a ribbon and slid it across the table. Read this aloud, he said. The lawyer adjusted his glasses, his eyes scanning the neat, slanted handwriting. His voice dropped into the solemn cadence of truth. To my firstborn son, Samuel, though the world does not know you, I see you. I regret the years I left you in shadow. One day, I hope the family that denied you will have no choice but to face you. When that day comes, this journal will speak where I could not. The words landed like a stone in a still pond, rippling through every corner of the room. Samuel, the man's name, my grandfather's secret, my family's shame. My mother's breath came in shallow gasps. She clutched my father's arm, but he pulled away, his face collapsing under the weight of exposure. My cousins muttered nervously, some wide-eyed, others suspicious, all of them shaken. And me? My pulse thundered in my ears. My world tilted. All my life, I had been told our family was built on honor, tradition, respectability. But here was the truth. It was built on erasure. Samuel's gaze caught mine. Claire, you deserve to know where you come from. The empire your parents promised you wasn't theirs to give. It was stolen.
Hidden.
Buried. I wanted to deny it. To protect the fragile image of the family, I thought I knew. But deep inside, I saw the cracks. The way Dad avoided the lawyer's eyes. The way Mom's voice broke when she screamed. Lies only shatter one way. Loudly. And today, they were shattering in front of everyone. The air inside the mansion thickened, as though the walls themselves were listening. Samuel stood taller now, not the ragged figure who had stopped me in the street, but a man stepping back into the place he'd been denied. He placed a folded letter beside the journal. This is dated 2 weeks before your grandfather passed. His signature is notarized. He wanted me here. The lawyer read it silently, then nodded with grim certainty. It's valid. Mr. Whitmore explicitly named Samuel as his eldest son and heir. By law, his claim must be considered equal. Gasps cut through the room. My father buried his face in his hands. My mother whispered, "No, this can't be happening." I sat frozen, my heart hammering. Equal heir? That meant everything I thought was destined for me, for my parents, for my brother, was no longer certain. My cousins erupted into whispers. We'll lose everything. He'll take it all. How did they keep him secret? Samuel's voice rose above the noise, calm but firm. I don't want revenge. I want recognition. I want the truth spoken aloud after a lifetime of silence. He turned to me then, and his gaze softened. Claire, You deserve to inherit without lies tainting it. But your parents built their power by denying me. You have to decide, stand with the truth or keep living their fiction. The room stilled. Every eye shifted to me. I saw my mother shaking her head violently, her lips mouthing, "Don't you dare." My father's eyes begged silently for loyalty. The cousins waited hungrily, watching me like vultures circling a battlefield. My throat tightened. I thought of the homeless man who'd grabbed my wrist, his warning seared into my bones. If you value your life, don't step inside. Now I understood. It wasn't just about wealth. It was about survival, of integrity, of truth, of bloodlines twisted into chains. I drew a shaky breath. If Grandpa wanted you here, Samuel, then you belong here. No one can erase that. The words hung heavy. My parents gasped, collapsing into their chairs as though my voice had cracked the last defense they had. And deep inside, I felt the shift. This wasn't just his reckoning. It was mine. The lawyer's pen scratched across the paper, recording every word, every acknowledgement. My parents sat in stunned silence, their empire of denial crumbling with each stroke of ink. Samuel stood beside me now, steady and unflinching. "Robert," he said, his voice directed at my father, "you always told people you were the only son. But deep down you knew the truth. You buried me because I didn't fit your image. But I'm here now, and the world knows." Dad's face reddened, veins straining at his temples. "You don't know what it was like. He left us scraps. He loved your mother more than mine. We had to survive." Samuel's expression didn't waver. "You survived by erasing me. But survival built on lies rots from within." The room went silent again. My mother dabbed at her eyes, though no tears fell. Her voice cracked. "Claire, please don't side with him. We're your family. Everything we've done was for you." I felt a hollow laugh rise in my throat. For me, they had done it for themselves, for control, for power. And all along, they demanded my loyalty while hiding the fractures beneath the surface. I turned to the lawyer. "What happens now?" He cleared his throat. "By law, the estate will be divided among all acknowledged heirs. That includes Samuel. Unless anyone contests with proof, his claim stands." The cousins erupted in protests, their voices rising like a storm. But I didn't flinch. For the first time, I wasn't drowning in their noise. I was standing above it. Samuel leaned closer, his voice low enough only I could hear. "Your grandfather trusted you to see what they refused to. He knew you would be strong enough to face it." The words pierced deeper than any inheritance could. It wasn't about money. It was about truth carved into the open, impossible to bury again. My parents looked shattered, their power dissolving before my eyes. And for the first time, I didn't feel like their obedient daughter. I felt like the heir of something far greater, the truth itself. The will reading continued, but the words felt secondary to the storm unraveling around me. The lawyer's voice echoed. "Properties, holdings, and accounts shall be divided." Each phrase cracked another piece of my parents' armor. My cousin sat rigid, eyes darting between Samuel and me, whispering like spectators at a trial. Some glared at him with open resentment, others with wary curiosity. But all of them avoided my gaze, because I had chosen truth, and truth frightened them. Mom finally broke the silence, her voice trembling. "Claire, you don't understand. If you let him in, we lose everything. The homes, the businesses, the future we planned." I cut her off, my tone sharper than I intended. "Planned for who? For me? Or for the image you wanted the world to see?" Her mouth opened, but no words came. Dad shifted uncomfortably, his hands clawing at the armrests as though he could hold on to a crumbling throne. Samuel, calm as stone, placed a hand on the journal. "This isn't about tearing anyone down. It's about being seen, about existing." The lawyer nodded solemnly. "And by law, his existence cannot be denied any longer." My parents looked at me then, desperation pooling in their eyes. As if I could undo this with a single word. As if betraying truth could glue their empire back together. But I was done being their silent accomplice. I lifted my chin, my voice steady. Samuel belongs here. Grandpa wanted it. The documents prove it. And whether you collapse under it or not, I won't pretend he doesn't exist. The words landed like a gavel. My father's shoulders sagged, his fight drained. My mother turned away, staring blankly at the wall. The cousins whispered louder, realizing the tide had shifted. Samuel's gaze met mine. For the first time, gratitude softened his hardened features. "Thank you," he whispered. And in that moment, I felt something new. Not fear, not betrayal, but release. The chains of silence my parents wrapped around me had snapped. But as the session drew to a close, I knew the hardest part was still ahead. Because some families don't forgive exposure. They plot revenge. When the will reading ended, the families splintered like glass under pressure. My cousins scattered with hushed voices, some throwing daggers at me with their eyes, others pretending not to see me at all. My parents remained slumped in their chairs, hollowed out, their empire of denial reduced to rubble. Samuel closed the journal, tucking it back into his coat with a reverence that felt like closure. He turned to me, his voice low. "You don't know how much courage it took to stand against them. Your grandfather believed in you, for a reason."
For the first time that day, I smiled.
Not wide, not triumphant, but steady. "This wasn't about inheritance," I said. "It was about ending the silence." We stepped outside together. The cold air rushed against my face, sharp and clean, as though the mansion itself had been holding its breath and finally exhaled. The sun was slipping behind the trees, painting the sky in gold and crimson. For the first time, the estate didn't feel like a battlefield. It felt like freedom. As we reached the gates, my phone buzzed. A message from Mom. "You've destroyed this family. We'll never forgive you." I stared at it, then slid the phone back into my pocket. Forgiveness wasn't mine to beg for. It was theirs to wrestle with. My only duty was to the truth. Samuel paused at the gate, his eyes scanning the horizon like a man who had finally stepped out of shadow. "He left us both a legacy, Claire. Not the wealth, not the property, but the courage to choose truth over comfort." I nodded, feeling the weight lift from my chest. Behind us, the mansion loomed, a monument to lies now cracked open. Ahead of us stretched a road I had never dared to walk until now. I didn't know where it led, but I knew one thing. I was no longer walking it alone. And as the evening wind carried away the echoes of my parents' denial, I felt a clarity so sharp it was almost holy. The truth had cost me a family, but it had given me myself. "Your sister's wedding was perfect," Mom beamed across the dinner table. "When will it be your turn?" I smiled, sipped my wine, and said, "It already happened. You just weren't there." The whole room froze. "My name is Kella Monroe. I'm 32. And if you think this is about a forgotten invitation, stay tuned. Because sometimes the real betrayal isn't being left out. It's realizing you were never really counted in." The room was a glow of champagne glasses and well-dressed guilt. Dad cleared his throat. My sister blinked rapidly, like she'd walked into the wrong conversation. "You're joking, right?" she asked. I set my glass down.
"No."
Mom blinked like she'd been slapped. "When?" she whispered. 6 months ago," I said. "A courthouse. Just us. No drama." Her face fell, lips parting with the kind of shock only expectation can summon. "You didn't tell us." "No," I said, "because you were too busy planning her perfect day. You didn't even ask if I was seeing anyone." They hadn't. Not once. When I got engaged, I kept it private, not out of shame but protection. Protection from the comparisons, the judgment, the subtle ways they made me feel like a spare part in someone else's fairy tale. So we eloped. Just me, Asher, and a steel blue sky. No venue drama. No seating charts. No tears from my mother about how the table linens weren't elegant enough. I had mailed a single photo afterward. One of me in my dress. Laughing.
Real.
No one replied. So tonight, I gave them the truth. Raw, clean, final. My sister looked away. Mom swallowed her wine like it was venom. And Dad? He finally asked something real. Is he good to you? I nodded.
Yes.
Better than you were. After the dinner silence wore off, Mom did what she always did when control slipped. She tried to reframe the narrative. You should have told us, she said, with that rehearsed tremble in her voice. As your mother, I had a right to be there. I raised my eyebrows. A right? I looked at my sister. You didn't think I had a right to be at yours. Remember? Because I hadn't forgotten. The missing RSVP. The suddenly lost invitation. The day of text that said, we assumed you'd be too busy with work. But I hadn't been busy. I'd sat in my apartment, alone, watching their photos flood social media, like confetti. My sister's smile, Mom's tears, Dad's toast. All while I scrolled, heart pounding, face hot, and realized they never wanted me there. Not really. I was the background sister. The one who never needed help. The one who made unconventional choices and didn't follow tradition. So, I created my own. My wedding was small. No matching dresses. No tiered cake. Just vows spoken on a windy hilltop, our hands pressed together, our eyes locked in defiance of everyone who said love only matters when it's witnessed. I didn't post it online.
I didn't need their likes.
Dad sighed now at the table, heavy and tired. Why didn't you tell me? He asked. I almost believed the softness in his voice. Until I remembered his toast at my sister's wedding. We're so proud to have one daughter who's finally doing things the right way. I looked him dead in the eye. You didn't ask. No one did. They only saw me when I reflected their image.
But now?
I was done holding the mirror. And across the table, for the first time in my life, I saw my sister's smile fade. My sister finally spoke. I didn't think you'd want to come to my wedding, she said, eyes flicking down to her plate. You always make everything about you. That was rich, coming from the girl who demanded 5 dress changes and cried over the shade of peonies. I tilted my head. Not inviting someone and justifying it after the fact doesn't make it right, it makes it rehearsed. She flinched.
So did Mom.
Dad picked up his fork like it was a shield. I kept going. Not to wound, but to witness. I was never going to be the sister who looked good in bridesmaid photos. Or the one who made your love story look bigger by standing quietly beside you. That's not fair. Neither was watching you all clink glasses while I sat home wondering what I did wrong. Her lip trembled, but I didn't soften, because the problem wasn't the wedding. It was years of revisionist history. Years of being labeled dramatic for speaking up. Years of being told I was too intense, too independent, too much. And yet somehow, not enough to be invited. Mom jumped in. Well, it's over now. Maybe we can move forward. I shook my head. See, that's the thing. I already did. Without you. Her face dropped like a chandelier cracking from the ceiling. I stood up, napkin folded gently in hand. I didn't come here to explode. I came here to set the record straight. I looked at my sister. You got the wedding you wanted. I looked at my parents. You got the daughter you celebrated. Then I smiled genuinely. And I got the peace none of you ever offered. And with that, I walked out, leaving behind the only seat I'd ever truly been assigned at that table, the empty one. You said. 3 days passed before anyone said a word. Not a call. Not a text. Just silence, cold and tactical. And then on a Wednesday night, Mom emailed. You blindsided us. Your sister is heartbroken. There was no need for that scene.
No need?
I stared at the screen like it might blink and correct itself. That scene was me finally speaking. One truth. At one table. After decades of swallowing everything else.
I didn't reply.
But they weren't done. My sister posted a throwback on social media, a photo of her wedding day. Captioned, some people watch. Some people vanish. Real love shows up. The comments were predictable. Friends validating. Distant cousins chiming in. A parade of digital loyalty. I didn't flinch, because they could spin the story all they wanted. I had already lived it. Meanwhile, Asher, my husband, was folding laundry when I told him. He didn't ask for details. Just walked over, kissed my forehead, and said, Do they even know your favorite flower? They didn't.
He did.
Calla lilies. He planted them outside our rental 2 months before we got married. Said, "Now your name lives in the garden." My family never asked why we eloped. Never noticed how light I became once I stopped performing daughterhood like it was an unpaid role. I went on with my life. Until another email arrived. This time from Dad. Just 5 words. "Can we talk?" Just us. I hovered over it, because sometimes the ones who stay silent after your truth erupts are the ones who finally heard it echo. And sometimes, they're just hoping to pull you back in gently before you realize you're free. I took a deep breath and typed. "We'll see," you said. Dad picked a diner, neutral ground. Same one we used to go to after my violin recitals. He was already seated when I arrived, hands folded, coffee half full. For a second, I saw the Dad I remembered, steady, quiet, impossible to read. "I'm not here to take sides," he said. I raised an eyebrow. "You've already taken them." He nodded, slowly. "I know." The silence stretched between us like fabric pulled too tight. Then he said, "You getting married without telling us did hurt." I didn't flinch. "You not asking where I was the day of her wedding? That hurt too." He looked down, thumb tracing the rim of his cup. "I didn't know how far it had gone," he said. "Between you and your mother. You and your sister." I let that sit. "Dad, it didn't go anywhere. It stayed exactly where it always was, unequal." He didn't argue. Instead, he reached into his coat and slid a photo across the table. Me and Asher. Smiling. Wind blown. My dress caught mid-spin. "I kept this," he said. "Even when your mom said it was disrespectful." I stared at the photo. My hands had been shaking when I sent it. One last attempt. One last olive branch. "I didn't know how to reach you," he added. "Not without her listening." I leaned back. "Then maybe don't reach for me until you're willing to stop whispering around her." His eyes softened. "I miss you." I folded the photo and tucked it into my purse. "I'm not lost, Dad. I just stopped walking in your direction." He nodded again. No defense. No pleading. And maybe, finally, he understood. I hadn't left the family. I'd just stopped waiting for them to meet me halfway. 2 days after the diner, Mom showed up at my door. Unannounced. Uninvited. She didn't even knock. She waited in her car like a lawyer prepping closing arguments, sunglasses on, jaw set like granite. I opened the door slowly. She stepped out, arms crossed, lips pursed. "I suppose your father told you I was the villain now." I didn't answer. Because villains don't always wear black. Sometimes they wear pearls and speak in sighs instead of slurs. "I raised you better than this," she said. "Did you?" I replied, calm. She exhaled. "You embarrassed us. You humiliated your sister." "No," I said. "I answered your question. You asked when it would be my turn. I told you." And that scene at dinner was honesty. I cut in. The silence swelled. A war without noise. Then she stepped closer. "You've always needed too much," she whispered. "Too much validation. Too much space." I felt that line hit where it was meant to. But this time, it didn't land. Because she didn't know. I'd already unpacked that wound. With Asher. In therapy. In the stillness of a marriage she never asked about. I looked at her the way you look at a painting you once loved, and now see for what it really is, technique without truth. "You didn't lose a daughter," I said. "You just lost the version you controlled." She blinked. "You think you're better than us now?" "No," I said. "I think I'm just done bleeding for the applause you never gave me." She didn't cry. She turned, walked back to her car. Engine started. No wave. Just taillights fading down the street. And I closed the door without guilt. Because not every ending needs a slam. Some need silence and a lock. A week later, the wedding album arrived. Not mine, my sister's. A thick, cream-colored envelope with gold embossing and the Monroe family crest etched in the corner. No note. Just the album. Sent to me like a peace offering. Or a provocation. Asher watched me slit it open at the kitchen counter. "Sure you want to do this?" he asked gently. I nodded. Sometimes, closure isn't about what you want to see, but what you're finally ready to face. The first few pages were predictable. Dress fittings. Champagne flutes. Dad walking her down the aisle. Then came the reception. Mom mid-toast, eyes glassy with pride. A long, scripted quote about daughters, dreams, and destiny. Then one image made me freeze. A family portrait. Everyone lined up, smiling, poised. And there it was. My name, written under the photo. Except the body standing there wasn't me. It was my cousin from Vermont. Same height, same dark hair, wearing a dress suspiciously similar to one I once wore to a graduation. They passed her off as me. Framed it. Labeled it.
Posted it online.
As if presence could be faked. As if truth was just a caption away from revision. Asher stood behind me, jaw tight. "They replaced you," he said quietly. "In pictures." "No," I whispered. "They erased me, and didn't think I'd notice." I slid the album back in the envelope. Didn't tear it. Didn't scream. I simply wrote one word across the front in permanent marker. Return. Dropped it in the mailbox the next morning. No note inside. No explanation. Because when someone deletes you from the frame of their perfect story, you stop being the background and start being the author of your own. You said. They never responded. Not to the returned album. Not to the message written across the envelope. Not to the unspoken truth inside it. And that silence? It didn't ache. It clarified. I stopped waiting for the apology that would never come. The revision that would never be printed. Instead, I started building something of my own. Asher and I found a little venue by the lake. Nothing fancy, just a wide porch, twinkle lights, and space for 30 chairs. We called it a celebration of honesty. Not a second wedding. Not a do-over. Just a gathering of the people who actually showed up. Old friends.
Colleagues.
2 neighbors who brought homemade pie. No seating chart. No expectations. No relatives needing emotional babysitting. And when I stood in front of those 30 souls and read our vows, again, but this time aloud, I didn't cry. I breathed. Because healing isn't always poetic. Sometimes it's just honoring what was real in front of those who never made you earn love like a prize. Afterward, someone asked if my family was coming. I smiled gently.
No.
They already attended a wedding. Just not mine. That night, back at home, I took the last box down from the closet. Old cards. Framed quotes from Mom. A bridesmaid dress I never wore. I placed it all in a bag. Not with rage, with relief. And dropped it off at the donation bin on 7th Street. A girl in line behind me said, "That's a really pretty dress." I turned and smiled. It was never really mine. And as I walked away, lighter than I'd felt in years, I realized. Family isn't who shares your name. It's who never has to ask twice where you were when it mattered.